What we're going to do next is work on those backgrounds.
Yes.
So if you go to the stage to the backdrop, right now we only have the one for the urban outdoor.
Yes.
So now you're going to click the choose backdrop from library. I'm going to go to the indoor scenes and just choose the kitchen. You're clicked on the kitchen and you're under the costumes. And if you look at, instead of saying costumes, it says backdrops.
Yes.
So you've got your white one, which is a blank, and
Yep.
if you click on that, you can click that little tiny X and it'll delete that particular backdrop, so you just have the two of them. And now what I want to do is think about the commands we know so far, and you can click on the scripts button for these backdrops. Think about the commands we know so far. When the green arrow's clicked, that's an event. What look do you think you'd want right off the bat? So go ahead and give that a try. You're going to go to the scripts, drag to that programming area when a green flag is clicked, and then go over to looks.
Yeah.
Take a look at those, the top command.
Well, we can either do switch backdrop to,
right?
Or we can use next backdrop, but I don't know how that would work.
Okay, so what happens is switch backdrop to is like saying directly, as soon as the green flag is clicked, show me the urban street sign. Next backdrop, if you say next backdrop, depending on what was on the screen last, it might want to do what you want it to do, or it might show the kitchen, because just whatever backdrop you're clicked on, it's going to show you the next backdrop.
Okay.
So you probably want to say directly, when that green arrow is clicked, switch to the urban backdrop. So if you click on the green arrow, once you join those two commands together, it should bring you right back there. So now think about what we did with the wizard. How could you extend that to the stage? What we did was we had the cat say hello, go to the door, ask is anyone there, go to the next door, the wizard hops over, and we're going to have him poof the door open. So what would we want to add under control and looks to get the kitchen to pop up?
Okay, because the kitchen hasn't popped up yet.
Correct. So we definitely want a control, and we've only learned one control so far.
Right.
So what control do we want?
Should we put the weight?
Yep.
Okay.
Because we don't want that kitchen to pop up as soon as, it's done showing you the urban scene. So we're going to need it to wait for some amount of time, and that just takes fooling around. And then what are you going to do from looks after that appropriate waiting time?
Then what is this? Let's see. Next backdrop?
And you could do next, and it should work because you've only got two backdrops. So that should work fine.
Oh, okay. Or we can use the switch backdrop too.
Right. So either way should work.
Okay.
And then you're going to click the green arrow, the green flag, and you're going to need to fool around for a little bit with that wait to decide how long do you need to have it wait before it shows you the kitchen.
Yeah, 1 second I think is too fast.
Definitely. So just play around a little. And that's the nice thing, again, with the third, fourth grader. These are commands that they can pull together.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it all really ties into that storytelling of, what story do you want to tell? Who are the characters? What's the setting? What do you want them to be saying to tell that story? And I'm almost there.
I think between 12 and 13 seconds is good.
Okay, good. And so that's the nice thing. It's whatever you feel is right. So there's no right answers to these. It's just whatever the programmer decides is appropriate.
Right.
Okay, good. So we've got that happening. Now, the last thing that we want to do is we want that little girl to appear, but we don't have a little girl, and we want to paint our own.
Okay.
So what I want you to do under sprites is click the paintbrush icon, and that's going to allow you to create your very own sprite. Now, if you think about it, if you click on the cat or the wizard, you can see about how big that sprite is, right?
Yeah.
So that's about how big you want your little girl to be drawn, or your little boy, whoever it is you want it to be.
Hmm.
You'll also notice that the drawing tools jump to the left side of the screen.
Yes.
And the reason that they did that is because you're not in vector mode anymore. You're now in bitmap mode, because those PNG pictures that drawings, they're bitmaps.
Yeah.
So what you can do, and do it, just quick and dirty, I'm going to use the ellipse tool and choose some color for the character, and I'm going to draw a little head. And with the ellipse tool, if you didn't draw a solid ellipse, you'll notice when you click ellipse on the lower left corner, you could have an empty ellipse or a filled in ellipse. And so if you just left it an empty ellipse, you could use your paint bucket and fill it in. You can use your paintbrush tool, and in the toolbox down below, you can drag the slider bar to make it thicker, and you can give some little eyes and a little mouth with the paintbrush. So just, however good or bad your skills are. And then you can give the person some hair. And as you're drawing it, you'll see that that character is showing up on your stage on the left-hand side of the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And
Just noticed that.
yeah, and so you can, you can just keep fooling around until you have kind of a little person drawn. And before we hang up, I'll show you real quick where you can find out what all the tools do. But we just want to, whoops, we just want some kind of little person there.
Yes.
And if it's too big, this is, whoop, undo. There's an undo button and a redo button up at the top of the screen, by the way.
Okay.
The little grabby hand, the selector, you could drag a box around it, and then you could use the corner handle to shrink it down a little bit if you need to, and then switch back to the paintbrush. But you've created your own sprite now. And so again, kids love creating their own sprites. They could spend a long time doing this.
Absolutely.
And also, you notice on the bottom of the screen under sprites, the cat's called Sprite 1, the wizard's called Wizard, the little girl's called Sprite 2. If you click on the little girl and click on the letter I, you can give your sprite its own name. So I called mine Katie.
Okay.
And that becomes handy with some of the other commands, because when you're, if you duplicate characters, like let's say I want two twin girls, I can right click on Katie and click duplicate. So now I've got Katie and Katie 2. And so if you just call it Sprite 1, Sprite 2, Sprite 3, Sprite 4, eventually it gets really confusing.
Okay.
Also, if you don't see the little blue eye, you have to click on that second sprite, and then you'll see that eye. Or you could right click and go to the info box, and that's another way. So I'll call my second Susie. So I got Susie and Katie. And so I got little twin girls here. So now think about your programming again. And I don't want twins, actually. It's going to get too confusing. So I'm going to right click on Susie and delete her.
Okay.
But now think about your backdrop, right? What kind of script do you want to give Katie now? And we probably still want to start it with that event of when the green arrows clicked. But the problem is, if I click the green arrow right now, and you could do it too, you'll notice Katie's standing on the street, and we don't want her to start by standing on the street, right?
Right.
So give Katie a when green flag is clicked command, and if you look at the looks set of commands, you'll see that the 5th and 6th commands down are show and hide.
Yes.
So what I would want is as soon as the green flag is clicked, I want to hide Katie.
Yep.
And now what control and other look command do you think you want to add to Katie's program?
So we're gonna hide her in the first one.
Right?
Do we want her showing up in the kitchen?
We do, because the cat went to visit Susie or Katie, whoever she is. So
Okay.
we want her to eventually show up in the kitchen.
So maybe
So,
wait a second,
okay.
and then how do we appear? Then
So then from the
so
looks,
then show.
show, right. So
So
click your green flag and see if you like what happened.
she's still on my first one.
Because you only waited how long?
1 second.
Now, how long did you wait until the kitchen appeared? Go back to the stages script.
To the kitchen, I waited 13 seconds.
So how long do you think Katie should wait before she shows up?
13 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. And now you should be able to
Let's see.
have the show go a little bit better.
Yep. But
Okay.
now they all bunch up together though.
They all bunch up together. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want, after, maybe before she shows up. So you see how I'm separating my show command from my wait command? What you might want to do is drag Katie in front of the stove and then give her a motion command that's where she's going to go before she shows up. Take a look at the cat's command, and maybe you're going to want the cat to wait some amount of seconds before he jumps over to another spot. So this is where you start playing around with what do you want to have happen. So if I think about it, I might want to have the cat wait 3 seconds and then jump to a new location. And the 3 seconds may not be enough. This is where it's again with the green flag, test it out, see if the thing kind of hops in the speed that you want it to hop. And then another thing is you'll notice that the cat and the wizard are facing away from their friend, but you may want the cat and the wizard to be looking at the little girl, right? So if you go to costumes, so I'm on the cat, you want to go to the cat, go to costumes, and you'll notice I didn't point this out too strongly yet, but the cat has 2 different costumes, and if you click between them, you see how it almost makes it look like his legs are opening and closing?
Oh yeah.
So we can play with that feature in a minute too. What we want to do is we want to duplicate the cat's costume and flip them over. So if you take a look at my screen,
Yep.
I'm hovering over costume 1 for the cat. I'm right clicking and I'm duplicating it. So you can do that.
Okay.
And now you should have 2 cats with the legs spread further apart.
Yep.
That 3rd cat, if you click on him and look to the top of the screen, you'll see that there's an option there that says flip left or right. So if you click on him, it's going to flip him to look in the other direction.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then you could do the same thing with the other cat. You can duplicate that cat and flip him over in the other direction. Oops, I just flipped him upside down. And then you could do the same thing with the wizard. He's only got 1 costume. You can duplicate him and then flip the 2nd costume over. So now let's see what we want to do with the script now, right? Because if you click on the cat, His script is saying when the green arrow's clicked, go to the street corner, say hello for 2 seconds, glide to the first door, say, is anyone there? Glide to the second door, wait a few seconds, hop over to the other point in the kitchen, and maybe we want him to turn around. So remember that it's those looks blocks that say, how do you want your character to look? So after I tell my cat to wait 3 seconds and go to a different point in the kitchen, I can tell him to switch to that third costume. And that's what's going to force him to look the way he does. And that ends up introducing another odd problem, because look what happens when I click the green flag now. Now the cat's facing the left and walking backwards.
Yeah.
So how can I change my programming a little bit to have my characters start off the show pointing in the correct direction?
Let me see here. Well, we need a control. I think we need an additional control somewhere.
And you could do it as a control, but you could also just squeeze in a switch costume in there. So if you take a look at what I did here, I changed the programming a little bit to say when the green arrows clicked on the cat, immediately switch him to costume number 1, which means he's going to be pointing to the right. So I just sort of broke apart the programming block a little bit and just added in a switch costume to costume 1.
And you would have to do the same thing for the wizard.
And you have to do the same thing for the wizard, right? And then, so it's going to start with switching to costume 1. It's going to end with switching to costume 3. And with the wizard, it's going to start by switching to costume wizard, and then it's going to switch to the costume wizard 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now when you run the script with the green flag, they should be facing in the right direction for starters.
Yep.
And then they should start running around and doing their thing. And then when it gets to the kitchen, they should flip over. And I'll tell you, another thing that the kids love is sound. So it would be kind of neat if the cat could make knocking sounds on the door. And I don't know if you have speakers, but if you do, when you test it out, and I don't know if your kids have speakers, but if you click on the sprite for the cat and go to the sounds tab, you'll see that there's a built-in sound of a meow.
Yes.
So just like our costumes, the sounds have the first icon that looks like a little speaker that says choose sound from library.
Oh, yes.
And so there's an instrument called a, where is it? Tap snare. So the tap snare button, I could add that. Okay. And so I can delete the meow sound with that little X and now have that tap snare sound. And this way in scripts, after he glides to that first door and before he says, is anyone there, I can go to the sound set of commands and I could say, play sound, tap snare, and that's just going to be a single brump. And then I could have it wait, but instead of waiting a whole second, and you have to talk to the third graders like pennies and nickels and dimes. You know, what's smaller than $1 is a quarter, so 0.25.
Yeah.
So I could have it play the sound of the snare, wait 0.25 or wait like a quarter's worth of time, and then play it again so it kind of goes brump, brump. And so now when I play the script, it drags him to that door and goes, it sounds like tap, tap.